But I say to you who hear, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who abuse you. And I'm going to read a short story that Jesus tells in Luke 18. It's about two men having a prayer meeting. Jesus told his next story to some who were complacently pleased with themselves over their moral performance and looked down their noses at the common people. Two men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee, the other a tax man. The Pharisee posed and prayed like this: "O God, I thank you that I am not like other people, robbers, crooks, adulterers, or heaven forbid, like this tax man. I fast twice a week and tithe on all my income." Meanwhile, the tax man, slumped in the shadows, his face in his hands, not daring to look up, said, "God, give mercy. Forgive me, a sinner." Jesus commented, "This tax man, not the other, went home and made right with God." If you walk around with your nose in the air, you're going to end up flat on your face. But if you're content to be simply yourself, you will become more than yourself. These are both what we might call religious men praying in the same temple. On the surface, their practice is identical, but in actuality, their approaches are polar opposites. See, the first man's practice is built on presumption and pride, and the other man's on humility. The first man's practice is divisive and exclusionary. The first man is happy that he's not like the second man. We all need to make sure we don't find our identity in our own righteousness or differentness or privilege. We all need to make sure we are not comparing ourselves with others. It's a powerful temptation, justifying our existence based on the perceived unworthiness or failure of others. I think it can be harmful to define ourselves by what we see or don't see in others. We have to be careful when we even think something like, well, I'm glad I wasn't born in wherever. I'm glad I don't live in wherever. I'm glad I graduated from blank instead of blank. A few years ago, I reluctantly accepted the vice presidency of our denomination's International Missions Department, Church of God in Christ. I remember the night when the president recruited me, took me out to dinner, and I wasn't that excited about doing it, but he had an answer for everything, and I told him, well, I'll talk to Diane about it. And I was pretty sure Diane was going to say that I was already doing enough. And she said, well, it can't hurt to try. So I did, and I didn't last long. Among the things that rankled me was the use of the term 1040 window. For those who haven't heard 1040 window, it's used by Christian missionaries to refer to those regions located between 10 and 40 degrees north of the equator. The window forms a band encompassing Saharan and Northern Africa, as well as almost all of Asia. Roughly 2/3 of the world population lives in the 1040 window. And the religions practiced there are predominantly Islam, Hinduism, Animism, Buddhism, Judaism, and Sikhism. Many governments in the 1040 window are officially or unofficially opposed to Christian work of any kind within their borders. The missionaries' idea is that these people would be benefited by exposure to their message. But the way they articulated it made me feel like the message was contaminated with American exceptionalism, or what I see as Christian West supremacy. I wondered, why are we targeting people in other places, especially when we have those people living on our own shores? Is this purely being motivated by love or something else? I was bothered by the presumption that unless the global family received Jesus, they were all going to spend eternity in hell. I resigned from the missions department in less than a year. I think what burdened me most is that this is a predominantly Black denomination. Some of you, many of you actually, have read my book, Making America Great Again. Thank you. In the book, I share an experience when, as a newcomer to Santa Barbara, well over 3 decades ago, I visited the campus of a large church in town. I saw posted in the windows pictures of children, kids from Uganda, Tanzania, the Congo, etc., kids that they were helping. As an African American, I was disturbed by these images, wondering, why not befriend your darker skinned neighbors who live among you? So back to the two men who went to the temple to pray. Just because you are praying doesn't mean you are helping. The first man is pleased with himself, pleased that he is not like the other man. But the truth is, he is like the other man. Not just like the other man, he is the other man. You and I are not only like each other, I am you and you are me. In his prayer, the first man talked about the second man like he knew all about him. When you act like you know people whom you haven't stopped long enough to recognize, then you are being divisive and exclusionary. Of course, none of you thinks that way. You are people of peace and humility. That's what I perceive. Maybe you have heard or even used words that have gone global. Words like namaste, harambe, ubuntu, lakech, rin, or ik onkar. The Sanskrit word namaste is a gesture where the soul in one person acknowledges their soul in another. The Swahili word harambe means we all pull together. The Bantu word ubuntu, I am because we are. The Mayan word lakech, you are my other me. The Mandarin word rin, co-humanity. The Sikh term ik onkar, oneness. In today's world, it is manifest that millions of people don't have time for people that they think are different, that are not like them. Some are tightly wound and hostile. We've all heard about and maybe experienced people who don't have time for others, public officials, police, clergy, doctors, celebrities, talking heads, just to name a few. People are looking at other people without seeing them. We've heard about the rise in belligerence in public spaces, perhaps most alarmingly on airplanes, but also in checkout lanes, restaurants. There's road rage, trouble at school board meetings. Some have speculated that the pandemic is a catalyst because violence is one way humans respond to grief, loss, and unendurable pressure. Their violent response increases the pressure on all of us. And tragically, some of this aggression comes from people who pray. But the prayers they pray can only be divisive and exclusionary. Are we spiraling into greater chaos? Maybe. But we're also seeing a portal, a crossing over. Yes, some people have become more combative, but many have not become more combative. Like the second man in our story, they choose the way of humility. They want to be correctable. They want to be curious. So they've become more reflective, more introspective. Instead of resisting, they're trusting. They stood in the pool of reflection until the ripples ceased. They are noticing, acknowledging things that they took lightly or didn't take at all before. They let go of yesterday's trauma and embraced, or at least they've imagined embracing, all of those whom they know and love. They're being healed. And whether they realize it, they are also healing other folks. You may have saved or healed someone by listening, by not interrupting them, by believing them. You've grown closer to people, not in the sense of finishing each other's sentences, but in the sense of being attentive to the other party as they finish their sentences. And maybe finishing your own sentence at a later date. Listening is a spiritual discipline. It's the prayer of Psalm 141. Set a guard, O Lord, over my mouth. Keep watch over the door of my lips. Here's a hopeful thought. If you have had to step back from some people, stepping back can heal too, and sometimes both parties. This is important to realize because the fact that so many have become whole, more whole, proves that there is hope for change in the people that burden our hearts. If you are experiencing much needed life changers, it's evidence that other folks can have them too. So you can either love the haters or hate the haters, but only love creates hope. You know in your heart that you don't want to be acrimonious, even if sometimes you slip into it. You want to be kind. This is the humility of the second man who cried, God, give mercy, forgive me, a sinner. In the words of Jesus, we need to let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. And in the words of Otis Redding, try a little tenderness. This does not mean we are not angry, not at all. We are angry. We are outraged. Let me say again, it can be harmful to define ourselves by what we see or don't see in others. So we want to be careful that we don't divide and exclude. These words of Jesus point us to the beautiful world that we long for. He says, to you who are willing to listen, I say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, and pray for those who hurt you. Because we are not merely like all people, we are all people. As Americans, we can be especially susceptible to something else. But we all came from the same place and we live in the same place. Sometimes people will say, I'm glad I don't live in wherever, but I do live there. I live in Afghanistan. I live in Alabama. I live in Haiti. I live in Honduras. I live in Flint, Michigan. I live in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I live in Belarus. I live in Bangladesh. This is who we are. We are us. We are all we have. This is what people have always craved, perhaps more than anything. And folks, we will never reach global solidarity without local affinity. If we don't hear one another's stories, how can we have affinity? If we have affinity, we will have solidarity. And if we have solidarity, if we have solidarity, we will be unstoppable. Because when you see that others are just as angry as you are, just as outraged, morally outraged as you are, we together become unstoppable. You who participate in these Sunday communions are outraged. And one of the reasons you tune in is so that we can feed off of one another's anger. You need to be reminded that you're not the only one who feels that way. You need to know you're not being irrational or unreasonable. So to achieve solidarity, we need affinity. To reach affinity, we need each other's stories. What will hold us together, I ask, what will hold us together on the days we really need help? What else? Never underestimate the power of common memories. Are we praying for the stories of our sisters and brothers? In other words, are we fighting for them? Do they know that we're pulling for them? Yes, increasingly so, yes. In fact, we are finding affinity with people around the country and beyond. Through webinars, blogs, books, social media, journals, and platforms like Zoom, we are relating with other people who confidently hope and press for amazing outcomes, demanding amazing outcomes. Everybody wants amazing outcomes, and we know that amazing outcomes are possible because they constitute every one of our stories. We are worth us. The world is worth our effort. So I'll finish with this quote from Catholic theologian Ronald Rolheiser. God still loves this world and smiles upon it, as does a mother upon her child. Let's pray. I hear you, O Creator, and I will love my enemies. I will do good to those who hate me and bless those who curse me. And I will pray for those who abuse me. I will not look down my nose at anyone. I will not denigrate these beings who are your creation, because I need mercy. I need forgiveness. Amen. I want to pray that one more time. And I'm going to ask you to echo each line in your own space, wherever you are right now. Just lift your voice and repeat. I hear you, O Creator. I will do good to those who hate me, and I will love my enemies and bless those who curse me. And I will pray for those who abuse me. I will not look down my nose at anyone. I will not denigrate these beings, your creation, because I need mercy. I need forgiveness. Amen. Linnea, standing in for Tanya today.
I'm blown away, as usual, when you speak. Every other, if not every sentence, seemed like something I needed to freeze and print and hang on my wall. First reactions, anyone? What do you think then about that last statement? I will not, in the prayer, I will not denigrate anyone, the concept being because I am that person and he is me.
My first thought is it's just a perfect talk for what's going on right now in Afghanistan and Haiti. I mean, it was just like really hit me because that's been on my heart all week. So I just really appreciated the words, and I'm just trying to digest it kind of in that context.
Yeah. Thanks, Barbara. That's, I think, on a lot of our minds. Okay, admit it. How many of you have said, oh, gosh, I'm glad I wasn't born there? Anybody? Yeah.
I love what you said about how we need each other's stories. That line really hit me. Like I mean, as soon as you know someone's story, how can you hate them? Like even the worst person in the world, you can't, when you know what made them and why they're the way they are, you can't have hate for them.
Caroline, how have you ever heard someone's story that you had a low opinion of and it changed everything?
You know, I can't bring an example to mind right now, but certainly, I mean, as soon as you know somebody, you can't have that superficial kind of condemnation of them anymore. Like you just can't. You can still sort of dislike their choices and dislike what they do with their lives, but you can't really hate them.
Well, that's the way I feel about Bob Harper. When I met him, he told me his story, and all of a sudden I said, "This guy's okay."
So
Well
what were you
said.
thinking before that?
Yeah, well said, Caroline. Anyone else have an example? Michael?
Michael's hand is up. Yeah.
It's been 30 some years since I've taught. I taught high school and college for a while, but long time ago, if I got really frustrated with a student, which wasn't often, but when I did, and I really just started getting personally angry at them, what are they going to do next? Then you get together with them and you listen to their story. And every time something happens, you just understand. You're filled with empathy and mercy. And it's just like I've shared my story sometimes about talking to two men on death row, and immediately there by the grace of God go I so many things, so much affinity.
You realized how much like them you are?
Absolutely. You know, that's one good thing about having a lot of baggage, a lot of emotional wounds, is you can really empathize with the emotional wounds of others. You can't help but do that. And you love them.
Yeah. Ernie.
I know growing up often, because our neighborhoods are so segregated, or if they're a little bit integrated, they're only a little bit integrated. So you rely on the information that you get, be it media, be it your family, whatever. But I remember often hearing people say, I don't feel sorry for white people because they have more options than we have. And you listen to these things, but until you really are in somebody else's shoes or learn more about them or know, it might be this thing, but it could definitely be things that put us in the same ballpark. And so it's definitely not true. Some of the same pains and some of the same hurts, but those blanket statements that you lump everybody together as because they're privileged, because they can live here, because they can go there, they can do this, they have money to buy homes, they can all, but it's not always true.
Okay, so it's easy to say, how could they? Because you don't know their stories.
You don't know their stories.
Anyone else?
Peter's hand is up.
Peter.
Yeah, I was just curious, Pastor David, what thoughts you had in Afghanistan or other locations where, you know, we have people that are perpetrating, you know, I don't know, crimes, I don't know if that's the right word, but just violations on other people. You know, I really liked what you said about we are all people. I think we, you know, the expressions of others are expressions that we hold in our heart at various times in our life, whether we let them out or not. And empathizing with where people are is important. So, but I'm just wondering, yeah, what you think about how do you feel about people like in the case of Afghanistan, where we know the Taliban is going to basically you know, put, you know, women and girls in a position where they won't be able to go to school. You know, he'll probably, you know, put in jail all the women judges or kill them and their families. Anyway, just thought I'd ask to see what your thoughts were about that.
We are them. They are us. I think most of us would agree that we probably shouldn't, as a country, military shouldn't have been there in the first place. But it appears kind of reckless to, you know, once you're in, I mean, you broke it, you fix it, or you buy it, or whatever. And you probably know that, you know, all of the retired military brass are not in favor of this. You know, people like David Petraeus and others, they think this is, we are risking our own national security, because that's where, you know, where Al Qaeda and ISIS were born. And, you know, I can understand that. And so, you know, not to be alarmist, and this is kind of a digression, I hope we don't get off topic, but I wonder if the abrupt drawdown and removal of troops from Afghanistan, because they're still going to be employed by the military, these troops. I wonder if the administration recognizes the potential for homeland violence, and that there may be a need to have military fortification on our own shores. I don't know that. Obviously I don't have that kind of intelligence, but I just wonder if if their fingers on the pulse that way. But anyway, don't want to go in that direction. Okay. I was just thinking those thoughts.
But we are the Taliban. We are a president. And yet, I think you said something about, the thing I'm grappling with is the anger.
Yeah.
Can you say more about that?
You know, holy anger. We have a right to be angry about a lot of things. And to that, I will add that people who are being oppressed, like the people who are being uprooted by the Taliban right now, they are under no obligation to empathize with their oppressors, with their persecutors. That doesn't mean they can't love them as people, but they don't need to empathize with somebody who's trying to destroy them. And so this is where this is why you know, we can be angry collectively around the world about things, and we need to articulate it. We need to be present for our anger and recognize we're not alone in this. We're not crazy. Yeah. I see Bob's hand is up.
Okay, wow.
Yeah. So I have a lot of thoughts. I don't know if they go anywhere from your message, but, you know, first of all, what you were just talking about with the Taliban and Afghanistan and our role and everything, you know, it reminds me that one speaker we had who drew on the book of Judges, where the guy goes to the place with his concubine, leaves her outside. Everybody kind of has their way with her. She dies. He cuts her up into all these pieces, and it turns into this war, and they wipe out all the women. So then they have to go grab these women to rebuild their nation. And like one bad decision led to the next one, led to the next one, led to the next one. What if somebody just stood back and said, okay, that's kind of it. But the whole situation in the Middle East, I mean, maybe this doesn't answer the question that was asked, but war is not a nation building tool. And we have foolishly pursued that policy through several administrations. And, you know, I was just thinking today, in my lifetime, when has it ever been a good thing? It wasn't good in Southeast Asia. It's not good in the Middle East. The other thing is that, you know, what you began with when you talked about your experience on the mission board. So, you know, I have a lot of experience, a lot of time and effort invested in doing missions work. And in my era of that, it seems like there were two different philosophies. One philosophy is you plant a church, you go live as a missionary, you know, you establish the gospel and so on. And of course, that's been the majority view. But in recent years, there's been a sense that that is a very imperialistic way of doing things. And because you look around the world and what you see, and I would say the same thing from my own efforts, you see what was here in our culture transplanted in a form that isn't always strong, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The second idea is that you just go where there are Christians and you serve those Christians. And I've also been involved in that. I'm not sure that that's necessarily any more effective in the context of what you're teaching us today about I am that person. I'm going to love that person. I'm going to receive that person. As a missionary, you go with that in your mind and your heart, but that's not actually what happens. You're the outsider. You're the person with the money. You're the person with the power. You're the person who gets things done. You're the starter. You're the boss. You're the father, and so on. So one of the things I'm grappling with, and like, I'm sorry to take up so much time without having like a good conclusion or a good question to ask at the end of this, but is so what is Christ asking us to do with this message that we've been given? Obviously, we need to live it out. We need to live out more faithfully. I mean, the Beatitudes, blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are those who mourn. Those are the ones that Jesus says, these are the people in the kingdom. We need to embody that more. But I wonder how we carry this message in a way that's not imperialistic, that doesn't recreate, our own dysfunctional institutions, that actually brings love to people. So, sorry.
That's great. No, thank you for that question. How do we do that? How do we keep from those ingrained attitudes of condescension, I guess, comparison and competition and so on? Ideas? Oh, Scott.
Well, let me just say this, and then Scott. When I read the words of Jesus, who told his disciples, I don't call you servants, I call you friends. My understanding of being a disciple is being a friend. And that way, neither one of us holds power over the other. And I think that if we looked at it more in terms of just going and making friends, that could be
Yeah.
helpful.
Okay.
Scott?
Yeah, I really am interested in what Bob shared. I worked internationally for about 15 years, not so much direct mission, but more like human development. But it was from a Catholic organization. And, I keep looking back and wondering how often was I hegemonic? We wanted to get things built, like schools and stuff, and needed Western monies to do it. And I started imposing Western standards, and it was tough. And I'll never resolve it. The things I did, how good or how valuable. But Bob, you ended talking about love, and David just mentioned friendship and stuff. And I feel like I don't think we understand fully the power of love. And this piece of scripture, loving your enemies and those who curse you and stuff, it's one of the most subversive things in the entire Bible for me. And because I think Jesus was totally subversive through love. And I wish I could put to life what I'm going to share. And I just think what that has come to mean for me is, especially when you have strong enemies, so to speak, is that what you're doing, especially when employ just listening and full listening, as you talked about, David, you're disarming that person. You're disarming your enemies and making some friendship or equality possible. And I'm realizing as I get older, and too often I finish people's sentences, but if you, in that process, you're probably disarming yourself too. And that's where I just think the power of folks like Martin Luther King and all the people who suffered from them, that was exactly what they were doing with racist and the white empowered and just disarming through
Yes.
love and very subversive to me and very strong. But
I like that, disarming the person you're listening to and disarming yourself. And I remember Walter Wink saying the same thing. Very good. He would say, yeah, you're affirming their humanity and also affirming your own. And that is subversive.
And what may give us permission to love the unlovable, if we will, or perceived unlovable. You know, think about Dr. King's words that the love that he's talking about, agape, is not a romantic or a feeling-based love. And so once we recognize that we're under no compulsion to feel good towards them, then we can love them objectively and effectively, and love ourselves too.
I'm going to look quickly at the chat. Michael wanted to respond to the idea of missionaries going out with this agenda, with this program, this method, this very exceptionalistic attitude and condescending again. And he says, what if we just go and serve everybody? And oops, got a notification here. Oh, I'm sorry, Rosie, I'll get right to you. And listening, going into the mission field to just listen. So serving everybody, not just Christians, but people of all colors and stripes and so on. Would that work? Make it more effective? Is that Christian love?
I think that it's important to take the posture of that second man in the story, one of humility and recognizing that he needed to and we need forgiveness, because we're all flawed. And you know, I was just thinking, Bob pointed out very accurately that, or Peter, that Mother Teresa's model is powerful and attractive, justice-based and love-oriented. But even she was flawed. You know, at least that's the perception of many Indians. I've read some academics from India, from places like Calcutta, who were a little bit, not just a little bit in some cases, but they were upset that she contributed, in their view, to the poverty of their country because she imported Western values of no birth control to their society, which you know, only perpetuated the poverty that's there. So all of us, you know, need to take a good look at, you know, in what ways is what I have to give so Americanized or Westernized that even though I think it's appropriate, I think it's right, we should be questioning ourselves. And so be more like the second man than the first man who had all the answers, had it all together. We don't. And that's what connects us. We're connected in our humility, in our refusal to put ourselves forward as though we know everything and we have everything. And I think Michael said it earlier that, you know, we connect, you know, my brokenness connects with other people's brokenness.
Rosie, are you still there?
Yes, Bob, it was very powerful what you had to share, bro. I really appreciate it. And then the piggyback that Scott had was good as well. But I wanted to say, Pastor, you went through the definitions of all the various sayings, I'm gonna say, um, for we are one, basically. But in reality, until we are really truly humble and come to the realization that a lot of what's taking place currently, especially around the world, however horrific it is, our country has played a major role in the horrificness of it. And I say that because it's easy to judge anybody who doesn't think how I think, who doesn't believe how I believe. And I am taking it a step further to say everyone else too. We may not want to say that we're being judgmental, but the hell we're not, you know, because until we're real enough to keep it 100 and be like, I don't agree with this, but this is what is taking place. That what has been happening in Afghanistan, no one's ever been able to conquer them. I mean, look at how many years even like the Soviets were at war with them, and they couldn't bring them down. So who do we think we are, you know, our country, to go to everywhere we've been and impose our way of being as the right, quote unquote, way to be, and not allow for each place to determine come to their own self-determination.
So how do we get to the point where we can how do we get out of that? How do we become or foster becoming one?
We need to start, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
We need to start here with us, I believe, because and just a real quick example, okay, and then I'm just gonna keep listening. As a chaplain, I would trip out on everyone who would say to me, why do you even go do that? Those are lost causes. Those people are lost causes. You know, they're there because they deserve to be there. They committed whatever crime it was that they committed that resulted in their being there. And my response was way back then, 25 years ago, more, even to today, they need Jesus just like we do. So who am I to, you know, in all the ministry that I did, they minister to me. We need to start in our own homes.
Right.
Sounds like you made friends. Yeah. This is why, for me, this story that Jesus tells about the two men both praying, but you know, just having very different approaches in their way of being. One of them had the answers and felt like in some way he was superior to the other and superior to a lot of other people. But Jesus said the other man is the one who was justified. So it's what justifies us is in our humility and in our curiosity and recognition of where we come short.
Here's a trick question. As you've read that story about the two men throughout your life, which one do you identify with?
I think I can go back and forth, but mostly I identify with the second man. I mean, I think that to identify with the first man, you don't even know what you're doing. if you're awake enough to see what's going on there, you're gonna say, no, I want to be like the second man. And so that's what we set out to do. We make that choice.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we can always catch ourselves doing little things, sneaky little things like the first man.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's a kind of a trap in identifying with a second man. I guess there's the trap of taking pride in your own humility. Anybody ever done that?
Well, then it's no longer humility.
Right.
Shall we have
And
to
Stina, oh, when
Go
are we
ahead. No.
supposed to end?
No rules. Constina, go
no.
ahead.
Okay. You said something about nationalistic in the chat.
Trina.
Oh, Trina had said that we're conditioned to be ethnocentric, which is true. And then I said, and nationalistic. You know,
Okay.
I think that's our entire educational culture, you know, is to create nationalistic
Mhm.
people at the exclusion of other people globally. It's always about us first, at the detriment
Yes.
often of other people globally.
Mhm.
So here's the good news. I mean, that obviously sounds kind of dark and depressing, but here's the good news in all of this. There are things happening now that we notice that maybe years ago we would not even have noticed. We would have just, brushed it off, but there is an arousal of consciousness.
Yeah.
And so even if it doesn't seem like we're doing a lot, we're doing more, and we need to encourage people who are doing whatever they do to work within and outside of systems, to redeem systems, to challenge systems. There are, really sincere, passionate people working in so many different ways. And, and this includes those of you who are here just by being aware of what's going on. I don't know about you, but I suspect it's true for you. It's certainly true for me. Here I am in my 60s and just thinking of things that why didn't I know this 50 years ago? Why things would be so different. But we've come to a place where there is awakening, and that's the good news, because that's the precursor to us going through that portal.
And that gives a lot of hope, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We see God doing amazing things in ways that aren't always visible.
Yeah.
In fact, most of it is the proverbial bottom of the iceberg.
I think of Scott going to Vandenberg once a month with friends and colleagues. It's not always about am I seeing results? Is there a change happening? A lot of this is a spiritual discipline for Scott and for the people who are with him. And we need to make sure that we have our heads on right, that a lot of things we do will not appear to be fruitful, but we need to do them because they're the right thing, and they help us to be in alignment with things that are right. I see Lisa's hand is up.
Lisa.
Hi, I'm just gonna make a book recommendation because it kind of ties in with who is my brother and who is not my brother, and the answer is everyone is my brother. Can you still hear me? There's some
Yes.
And I had read this book recently. It's brand new. It just came out in July. It's called Trejo, and it's about Danny Trejo. And I don't know if you all know about him, but he is this former gang member who was in San Quentin, in Folsom, who is in all these prisons. And he came out on the other side by the grace of God. And he started doing movies, and he became a movie actor. And his main thing is he would help anyone. And that whole idea, if you ever read the book, and I hope you all will, because it's a fabulous book, it talks about, how all these people saw potential in him. And he doesn't say this, but I see in it how if he had been treated differently, he wouldn't have had to go to those prisons. And it just makes you aware of this person. If you saw him in a dark alley, would you turn away or would you say hello? And it's like, he's the same person, but it's your perception of him. And our perception of him needs to be, and other people needs to be, oh, I see the image of God in you. And I want to share with you, and I want to be a part of your community, and I want to interact with you. And I just want to love you. And you don't go in there saying, oh, I'm going to teach you. You go in there, I want to learn from you. I want to learn from you so that I can love you all the more. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
So that's wonderful.
You reminded me, Lisa, of Diane. Diane has a friend who didn't know me, and when I was working on my dissertation, I spent a lot of time at the local Starbucks with my laptop and with books and things like that. And when Diane was talking to this woman who found out I was her husband, and she apologized to Diane because she said she had concluded that I was a drug dealer. And that's why I was sitting out at Starbucks all the time.
Holy cow, that's great.
I was, because I was such a regular there, the clientele, they knew me, the people who worked there knew me. I was kind of known at that Starbucks, but who knows what other people might have been thinking after Diane brought that up.
Lisa, the title of that book one more time?